Words are bridges.
शब्द सेतु हैं।
अल्फाज दिलों को और इंसानियत को जोड़ने का एक अजीम और तरीन पुल है।
വാക്കുകൾ പാലങ്ങളാണ്.
लफ्ज़ सरी कदल तारान
आखर हमार मेल सन आखर हमार जोड़
শব্দই সমন্বয়ৰ হেতু
Cocktail rock, yakraise.
Thuhih inkung kaina siam tu ani.
Ajrahana apati kisale.
Grauthaining yaukrai.
Shabda setu hon.
शब्दां दी सान।
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of our festival co-directors, Namita Gokhale and William Dalrymple, festival producers, Conjoy Roy, and all of us at Teamwork Arts, I welcome you back to our online series, Words Are Bridges. Through this series, we aim to highlight the wealth of literature in languages from India and around the world. Our session today is The Awakening, Journeys Through Words, Anita Agnihotri in conversation with Arunava Sinha. Writer and poet Anita Agnihotri has written over 35 books and has been translated into major Indian and international languages. She retired from the civil services as Secretary, Social Justice Department, Government of India. Her books have underlying themes of the struggle, exploitation, and deprivation in the lives of the marginalised and traverse a wide range of human emotions, taking the reader through a journey into the dynamics of an Indian reality. Her recent books include the novels Mahanadi and Kaste and the translated short stories A Day in the Life of Mangal Taram. In conversation with celebrated translator Arunava Sinha, she speaks of her journey through the literary world. Anita Agnihotri's literary oeuvre spans across all genres: poetry, short stories, novels, children's literature, and essays. She has authored over 35 volumes in Bengali and has been translated into several Indian languages, including English and German and Swedish. Anita has received several honors and awards for her writing, including the Crossword Economist Book Award in 2011. A former member of the Indian Civil Service, Anita's writing brings out the unheard voices of the marginalised and explores the vast and complex Indian reality. Arunava Sinha translates classic, modern, and contemporary Bengali fiction and non-fiction from Bangladesh and India into English. Over 50 of his translations have been published so far. His recent translations include Kunal Basu's The Endgame, Bani Basu's Moom, Taslima Nasreen's Shameless, Desire for Fire, Modern Bengali Poetry in Translation, and the forthcoming Akhtaruzzaman's Elias's Khwabnama. Before we move on to our session, we request you all to follow us on our handles GLF Lit Fest on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get notified on all our upcoming sessions. In case any of you drop off due to bandwidth issues, you can find us on our YouTube and Facebook page. We now present The Awakening, Journeys Through Words, Anita Agnihotri in conversation with Arunava Sinha.
So thank you and good morning to everyone. Good morning to you, Anita.
Good morning, Arunava.
And it's so strange that we are not sitting on a bench on a stage in Jaipur, but are in two different cities separated by thousands of miles, and we are still part of a Jaipur Literature Festival. But perhaps it's also fantastic that we can still do this, no matter that we are locked down and everything that goes with it. How's your writing been going over this lockdown year, Anita?
It's good. Actually, what happens in Bengali writing is, the little magazines keep coming out and there is a request for writing. So there is writing for Pujo and it kind of goes on. So every time there are also webinars. So we keep on doing something or other. In fact, writing kept me going in this time. Though the place where I'm staying is very nice in Mumbai, and you can't imagine it is Mumbai because it is so green and full of old trees, the campus of IIT Mumbai. But otherwise, it would have been very difficult because I'm not able to travel. So writing is the only thing, and also reading that I'm doing along with it.
But travel and visiting places is an intrinsic part of your writing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, it is like, I feel find it very difficult to stay inside a city. Without that people connect, somehow my thinking dries up. love to go. It is not something like a research, much more than that. It is an involvement with the things that are happening. And very often I keep on going to the same place a number of times and keep meeting people, maybe the same people, and also connecting with the rivers and the vegetation of the place. So everything is a part of my writing. Luckily, I could go to a little run of Kutch in January. That's the last visit or only visit I could do this year, where I'd gone to meet the salt pan agarias and also visited Sabarmati Ashram. So after that, I didn't go anywhere.
So you've been writing a novel or a novella based on some of your trips that you just mentioned, isn't that right?
Yes, yes. I wrote a novel called Lobonakto, which means saline, on the life of the salt pan workers. But I also connected that with the, this salt march to Dandi of Mahatma Gandhi. And it's basically, two streams, they follow each other, like the present times of Agarias and the salt march, that is the past. So past and present. And in the end, the two stories meet somewhere, in the, I would say, in the present times.
So this is certainly a story that, like most of your other stories, in fact, all your other stories, need to be read, I think, by a much wider audience than just Bengali reading people. And so I want to ask you something about the fact that so many of your stories and novels are set in areas which are not Bengali speaking areas, and yet you write about them in Bengali. So how does that process work in your head as you're writing?
It is, Arunava, it has always been there in me, because from the time I have been writing prose, I have always been traveling and basically going out and seeing. There's a notion of the country in my own head. I try to explore that and keep getting back to that. But I am quite surprised that the Bengali readers, they have accepted me very kindly. In fact, when I wrote Mahanadi in Bengali, it is essentially a novel which is the story of a river. From the inception of the river to the place where it meets the Bay of Bengal. It's a long journey with people on both sides of the river, their lives, and so many things have come. And I was very apprehensive, thinking, names are slightly strange and, the geography is different. How will they take it? But I was amazed that Mahanadi was received very well, which again propelled me to write the sequel of it, which is called Mahakantar, which is again about the Dandakar and the forest, which is partly there and partly not there. The journey again along the river Indravati up to Gadchiroli, starting from Kalahandi through Chhattisgarh to Gadchiroli. So now I feel that there is a wide acceptance, but at the same time, I also feel that if readers outside Bengal who do not speak Bengali or speak other languages, they read it. It is wonderful, really, because then I connect with the country which I'm trying to explore through my writing.
So many of your works have been translated into English, and there's a new translation of Mahanadi as well coming out very soon, yes, as well as a new translation of your other novel, Kaste, yes, both of which we will talk about. Kaste also brings us back to both the past and the future. It's interesting that you've been writing about marches and long marches, perhaps almost 2 novels in a row. And do you want to tell us a little bit about the backdrop to Kaste and how you came to write it?
Yes, Kaste actually has been a very special, piece of writing for me, because it slowly developed in my mind, and as I went and met the people, the story started taking concrete form. I first went to parts of Marathwada in 2012, and there I saw this entire issue which has come up in the novel. This huge setup which facilitates, within quotes, female feticide, and there's a network of people who are in it, and people also were fighting it. And from there it got connected to the story of Marathwada and Vidarbha. The drought that is happening there, it has become perennial, and for no apparent reason, because it could have been managed, better, cropping could have been different. It seems there is a vested interest in, kind of keeping it on so that people also benefit. There is essentially politics and economics of drought, as you see. So that, that became part of the story. In fact, the entire story became one whole thing. And in the end, I felt, in fact, it's a novel written in real time, because when it was being written and I was still traveling in Marathwada, parts of Nashik, just a little before that, the farmers' long march from Nashik to Mumbai has taken place. And people, around 50, 60,000 of farmers, many of them tribal farmers, walked over 180 kilometers to go and give the representation to government about their problems. One major issue was regularization of the land, forest land, which they have been cultivating since a long time. But what struck me is this entire sadness, and I felt very angry that why do farmers have to walk and travel? It never happens to the industrialists or, trade and industry who get whatever they want sitting at home. The farmers went all the way. Of course, they were received very well in Mumbai and all along the way. But there is a huge tragedy in the fact that they have to ride, they have to travel, they have to walk, most of them barefoot, in order to reach the seats of government. This is not done, I felt. So this is how Kaste was written, and since you have translated it, you must have seen that the Bengali I've used in Kaste is very different from the normal Bengali I write. It's a stark, difficult place. It's a dark reality, and the Bengali is very, very bare. It has almost no ornamental quality. In fact, I found it so tough to write it. I felt that as if my Bengali is not able to cope with the reality that I'm trying to describe. So you will have to tell, how you have found that when you translated it.
Yes, absolutely. The starkness and almost the hardness, and in a sense, for me, I think the kind of horrors that you were describing almost dispassionately came alive much more than they would have had you thrown your emotions into it. So I think it was a very, very effective piece of writing for me. And as I was translating, because I was reliving everything that you had written, it gave me the chills right through. I also really admired how you threaded so many different streams together. You spoke of female feticide, you spoke of the draft, then there is also activism. One of your central characters there is a lawyer activist. You brought in the whole idea of exploitation of labor on the sugar cane farms. And through all this, you did not make these generic stories, but there were stories of very specific individuals so that, one could actually follow their fates. And all of this in a single novel. In fact, if you remember, when I first leafed through the novel, I actually asked you, is this a set of short stories? and you said, no, it's a novel. And then when I read it, of course, I realized, of course, it is a novel. But to my mind, I don't think any novel like this has been written in India, because it brings together, and it is not a single narrative at all, and nor is it multiple narratives wound around each other. In many senses, the unifying factor of this novel is the place.
Yes, thank you for saying this, Arunava. In fact, it happens when you are standing somewhere on the ground and you are almost, kind of noticing things which are happening around you, and you are being pulled in different directions. So if the novel is written, let us say, if I center myself today in Delhi or Mumbai and write a novel, it will be very different from, it is basically traveling and writing and the story developing in a very organic way. So I'm very, very glad that you have liked this quality. I mean, it will, whether the stories will fit into a frame and all readers will think it's a proper novel, I really do not know, but I could actually sense and feel the growth, the way it has grown. But there I must tell you one thing, which I have always admired in your translation, that the way you translate, I won't say you are you try, but I've seen that the kind of language or kind of context that is there, you immediately kind of, adapt yourself to it. Like if it is the urban situation in Kolkata, your Bengalis has one quality. For Kaste, your English has one quality. If it is Kaste, your English takes a different form. So, I don't know whether I asked you before, but I'm now asking you here, how do you achieve that?
Okay, so that's very kind of you. Thank you. But it's really just a matter of being led by the text. Because the original text has these different flavors and these different qualities about them, I am led by the text, and the translation automatically picks up those elements. It's not that it's something that I have to think through and craft separately or anything like that, to be honest. I think what helps is that I usually try to hear the text that I'm translating. So when I hear it, I try to hear it in my head, and that immediately brings it a certain quality which perhaps just looking at the printed word may not. So then I just try to listen and translate what I'm hearing.
But isn't it a very, very difficult task, Arunava? It almost means, if I can put it like this, that you are kind of eliminating, your own self for some time, and then you're getting into it. Isn't it a very, very difficult task to do?
But that's the job of any translator. I don't make any special claims there. All translators leave themselves out of the equation, as it were. They're sort of channeling, but they're not really bringing their own writing style into it, or they should not. I'm not sure how much we can avoid it entirely, but at least consciously there is no attempt to do that. In fact, I'll be honest, there comes a point when you translate so much that you are no longer capable of writing anything without a text in another language in front of you. So that's that. No, I'm happy about that. I'm very happy about that. But I want to ask you about the march and the fact that you may not have expected the march in your novel to be so eerily reproduced all over again 2 years later.
Yes, in fact, it saddens me enormously. It is a situation where it has happened off and on. After the long march, also shorter marches have taken place. Then there have been a talk about farmers from Maharashtra coming to Delhi, like they have offered once again now. But somehow I feel that it's a system again of which I was a part for such a long time. The fact that in this cold, people are sitting, people have come all the way, they're sitting with small children, with women, with elderly people, and there is no, almost so sensitive in the system that somebody will say, well, let me go to them and let me talk to them. They're all your people, they're people who are very much a part of our country. Whether you call them Annadata or not is a different matter. And the system, the government is there to respond in a way which makes positive communication possible. I don't think time should be lost like this, and strength should be tested. So I somehow feel that we write, these are being documented at the present times, people read. Ultimately, where is it reaching? Is if there is no compassion, if there is no accountability, which is much more important than compassion, I would say. Then another question which I was addressing in a separate lecture sometime back, that why do we write if it has no impact in this sense? Of course, there is impact, there is reaction in the reader, but ultimately nothing changes. It makes me very sad that this is happening once again.
But I would just argue that the impact that a writer makes through their writings is not necessarily felt in real time. That people read, and people read in the future, and then they understand what happened, and they understand what their lives are and what the world is, and it changes us in some way. It may not translate into immediate direct action on the street, but it changes us.
Arunava, this is essentially why we still read, the poetry poetry of Tagore, which we have read in the childhood, and we think the way we connect. Children bring out passages from the books which have been there, it may be written 100 years back. This is how we get our strength. But there are two things. One is that we all nurture ourselves through writing, which has happened already, which is happening. At the same time, as individuals, you would feel that your voices have reached somewhere where people respond, or the system is changing towards more humane, something better. Maybe it's a kind of impatience. I know it is not possible, but both the factors keep playing at the same time.
Absolutely, yeah. I think maybe I'll read a little bit from Kaste,
Yes.
the part about the march, a little bit about the march.
Yes, please.
Okay, this is from the translated version. So this is towards the end of the novel. The Kisan Sabha had already given several reminders about the march, and word had been sent to the distant fields. Many of the young men were back with their families after the February harvest. They would join the march to Mumbai. But the old folks and the pregnant women wouldn't go, nor would the babies. It wouldn't be right to expose them to such hardship. It was true Rukmabai was old, but she was an able-bodied woman farmer. Fate had handed her lifelong responsibility for a son who couldn't walk properly and would never have a family of his own. So she was joining the march. She felt no urge to bring her hand to her closed eyes and wipe away the tears trickling out of them. Laziness was rearing its head. Her eyes still shut, Rukmabai could hear the heart of the dead river pulsing again to the beat of human footsteps. There were so many of them after all. Some 4,000 farmers had come from the Surgana subdivision alone. Another 3,000 or 3,500 from Pet. They were like a flowing river, with Azad Maidan in Mumbai being their ocean. Numerous tributaries, creeks and waterfalls all merged into the main current. Adivasis don't live only in their own densely populated clusters. They are scattered across almost all villages. Not all of them farmed in the jungle, but still some of the families had chosen to join the march in response to the Kisan Sabha's call. The hired vehicles were running slowly along one side of the road, stopping at intervals to let the marchers pass. Everyone had a slip of paper with the registration number of the vehicle in which their bundles and bedding and blanket had been loaded. They were piled high with the marchers' belongings. Carrying their own load would make it even harder for the farmers to walk all the way. But 3 or 4 seats had been left vacant in every vehicle so that those of the marchers who were absolutely exhausted could rest their feet for some time. Rukmabai's turn had come too. Her legs had begun to ache after 4 hours on the road from Surgana, which curved around the mountain range to Ajwani. Shoes, sandals, she had never had the chance to put those on. But the road to Wani was treacherous, perhaps because it led to the border area. The surface had run off, exposing the stone chips and gravel underneath. Walking barefoot meant having her feet sliced open, even though her soles were thick thanks to all the barefoot walking she had done in the jungles and fields. But even these strong feet were losing their toughness. Catching sight of their state just before reaching Wani, the Sarpanch's nephew Suresh summoned a jeep and bundled Rukmibai into it. She had climbed the 400 or 500 steps to the temple of the goddess Saptashringi on top of a hill effortlessly during the Durga festival. But she had a throbbing headache today. Her tongue kept drying up. Out of sheer habit, she joined her palms together to say thank you and climbed into the jeep, her lips moving in a bid to utter forgotten words. It was still afternoon. Dindori was 20 kilometers away. The vehicles were headed for the Kisan Sabha office in the town. Farmers from Dindori and adjoining areas would be gathering there. The ground here is not as undulating as in Surgana. A long time ago, perhaps millions of years in the past, when the Western Ghat mountain range was being born as a result of the compression of the Earth's crust, the upheaval seemed to have been frozen permanently in Surgana. Here, a level stretch of land has suddenly plunged 100 yards. There, the mountain slopes keep cascading like a stilled wave in the ocean. From the end of the monsoon to the onset of winter, the earth acquires a soft green cover. As the sun gets hotter, the mountains and the earth below them turn auburn. In April and May, when the mountains are desperate to quench their thirst, the yellow and brown scorched landscape parches throats even more. It was still March and the heat hadn't risen greatly yet. Shantabai was sitting near the back of the jeep, resting her soles alternately against her ankles to prevent the pain from escalating. With the advent of the afternoon, she could feel a warm wind on her skin, nothing she wasn't used to. 2 old men were huddled in front of her. They too had got on at Wani, but they hadn't come from as far afield as Surgana. They were from Chandpur village under the Pithoda Panchayat. Perhaps they hadn't expected their backs to be aching after walking a mere 14 or 15 kilometers, or that the sun would make their heads swim. Both of them had shoes on. Not being used to them, they may have developed painful blisters. The more they advanced, the more the fields around them seemed bountiful crops. Rukmabai had farming in her blood. She could tell from a glance that this was not the way poor people grew their crops. The mountains ran alongside, but still it was obvious that the land here was robust, that it received water regularly. The care with which the crops were being grown along the road from Wani to Dindori was a joy to behold. The cultivator had sown his grapes with such affection. The wooden trellis for the grapevine to grow was always in place, for the vine survived for up to 10 years between sowing and reaping. The farmer from Nashik had pawned his wife's jewelry during last year's famine to buy chunks of ice from the mill and set them down beneath his crop. The tomato fields stretched for miles. Each of the seeds had been twined to a stick planted in the soil so that their growth didn't suffer. Tomatoes from this region are exported, as is the fresh bottle gourd. Winter is the time for cauliflowers and spring for tomatoes. Sadashiv, a glum old man sitting in front of her, said, "I've never seen anything like this. These crops are grown on water from the canals. Dindori farmers have 3 tomato harvests in 4 months. They're earning dollars from exports of tomato and onion." He was right. Rukmabai had never seen such sights. The region had been transformed in the past 7 or 8 years. Enormous polythene tents had been put up, covering large areas of the ground. Seeds of tomato, cabbage, and cauliflower were grown here, sugarcane too. Rukmabai was astonished to hear that sugarcane seeds were actually purchased before being sown. And so on. I'm tremendously struck by how in this one passage you have combined the stories of people's lives, the landscape, as well as the economic aspect of the earth. And it's all one seamless flow. It's extraordinary, really.
I think, Arunava, it is something to do with my seeing, the economic life, so to say, or social lives for many years. You can imagine I have been traveling in the countryside, not only in the place where I had worked, but also partly, over Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, on my own. So the seeing I have done, it has kind of got inside me. And also other thing is that, you have to imagine that for the first time, farmers of Nashik, border of Nashik, which is between Surguna, where this march started by tribal farmers, is a border area of Surat, and that is Gujarat, and Nashik of Maharashtra. And they cultivate in a very, very different condition. They cultivate on the hillside, where land is not demarcated, there is practically no irrigation, and they're always at the mercy of the forest people who will come and say, no, the land is not regular. So, you can't cultivate from next year. So and they are seeing for the first time how with deliberate, irrigation, with proper water, how prosperous farming is done. So the sense of wonder they have on seeing it for the first time, it is, maybe they're seeing it together also. The old people, everybody is collectively seeing it. So this is easy for me because I'm not an urban person in that sense. If you ask me to describe the Mumbai Stock Exchange, maybe I will horribly fail. But if you ask me to describe a countryside or a, riverside or people's cultivation, or maybe something like their own life in art, artisans or weavers, I'm very comfortable in that. This is what I have been writing about and seeing.
So talk to us about Mahanadi.
Yes, actually, it's a very it's a large novel. This novel, and it has been written over. It has taken me over 4 years to write it actually. And again, the same problem. Not problem. Same experience. Like I will write a bit, then I will again go back to that river and see how lives have changed, or with the same people I saw them sometime back, whether they're still there or moved out. And novel I've been carrying inside my heart for, let us say, over a decade, but I didn't have the courage. It is a huge river, and its complexity, where it reaches Odisha, it comes to Odisha border from Chhattisgarh, and then it flows over, through Bargarh and Suvarnapur. Then it comes to the Satkoshia Gorge, where the river flows between a narrow, patch of the hills. Then it comes to the plains, and together with it, I connected with the history, then the myths and stories of lives of people. So it became so big that I almost thought that I have come to the middle of the river and I can't, neither can I cross it, nor can I come back. But anyway, it got over and it has been received very well. And I will read out a bit from the translation, which Nivedita Sen has done. It's very beautiful in the sense, it is again, another way of translation, I would say. Nivedita has been very close to the text, the way the Bengali text has been written. And it is a novel which is written in a very rural language. It is not even Bengali. There are so many Odia words in that, Odia colloquial words, because the river has mostly flowed partly through Chhattisgarh and then again through Odisha, mostly. So she has, I think she had a tough time, but she has done it very gracefully. And you can see when you read the book, it's very dedicated and very true to the soul of the novel kind of translation. I think I can read, two small parts. This chapter is I'm very fond of. This is about, it's titled Mahul Shokhi. It is about two girls who were later elderly women who got separated when the Hirakud Dam was constructed. And the Hirakud Dam was the first large dam built in independent India. And its impact was massive. Nearly 200 villages were submerged when the Hirakud Dam waters came. And it completely, separated out people. So these two young girls who were their friends, they remained on two different parts. One girl didn't have to leave her village. She stayed nearby because their lands were not lost. The other was a tribal girl whose lands were submerged. So they had to move out to a very far off place from the bank of Mahanadi to deeper inside the jungles and hills of Sambalpur. So I will read from that portion, two parts, one where these people are traveling. Many of us have not seen or have forgotten when submergence happens, displacement happens, how life changes. And it is, I thought that it is important for me that I leave this story for, posterity, for whoever reads it. So then first I read a little bit about how people's journey. The road which connects to this village now, even now it is in pretty bad shape. One can guess that the appearance of the road will not change either until the road erodes to merge with the earth and innumerable wild weeds grow around its skeletal frame, or until another encounter takes place. The road came up when one encounter took place between the police and the extremists. That's how the village got eroded. The people in this village had come from the Kutirpalli village that was on the bank touching the Mahanadi on the west. There were no villages here then, only rocky plateaus and endless forests. They had come in a team, walking all the way from the edge of the Mahanadi, crossing the town of Sambalpur on the way. It had taken them 2-3 days. They had stopped on the way and cooked and eaten their meals under the shade of trees. With them were all the goats and cattle that were fit to walk with them. The lorries loaned to them by contractors had arranged to transport only the doors and window frames of their old houses and the paddy they had stored in their homes. The ripe paddy in their farms had got drowned as they had watched helplessly. The flood that had come would sink over 140 villages that were strewn on either bank of the Mahanadi. Here there is one part about the journey. The women were crying in spasms as they went along. They had wept all the way and in different ways. They had blended the lamentation in their hearts with a sort of broken melody and poured it all into the singing of old songs. The faces of the men were stern, grim, and despondent. The government had driven them away. This had really hurt all of them. This was the government of independent India. This was the first displacement which happened. The construction started immediately after the independence, and these people got displaced around 1955-56. And all of them, the poorest people, were most unprepared for this submergence because they always thought that such a mighty river cannot be dammed. They always thought something will happen and this will be stopped. So by the time they knew water was coming, they had no land, they had no money in hand. People went in a few annas of compensation because they were not even compensated for the land or crops they left. And they had no place to go, and wherever they could find some free land, they went and settled. That's how from Puthirpalli village, they went to deep down in Jujumura. And there is another side of the story where this, the other lady who did not get displaced, she was from a relatively better off household. Her son Kuber, who goes up and he actually comes to visit these people, he is recounting his childhood. For this young boy Kuber, this Hirakud Dam is almost like a huge sheet of water. It's like a sea. And he doesn't understand what is under that water because he has never seen these things. But his mother tells him, Ma said to Kuber, see Khoka, this is our Shiv Mandir. How often have I gone there? The banyan tree is no longer there. The ancient tree might have got uprooted long ago by a torrent of water. It must have got swept away and gone under deeper water. During his childhood and youth, Kuber did not understand the meaning of this. To the child's eyes, the expanse of water that was the Mahanadi was in fact a bottomless sea. Only its waves were not as turbulent as those of the sea, and it did not come and lash at your feet at the time of high tide. Kuber had not reached an age when he could understand the reason why his mother's heart longed for a temple or a tree that were concealed somewhere within all this. It was the time of going to bed in the evening after eating a hot meal of rice with fish curry that was more beautiful and anxiety-free. Kuber would sleep on the palm mat. Next to him, Ma would be in a half-lying position. She would be caressing his body and hair with her hands, and Kuber would say, Ma, please tell me once again the story of what happened when Hirakud was built. It was a narrative of people's heartbreak, a story of the distress people felt by having to find refuge in other villages. There were many such chronicles about Hirakud. Ma did not want to recall those harsh truths to the child. Listen to what happened after the floods came, she would say instead. All the houses were makeshift village homes here. People were going away slowly with the window frames, quailwood, cows, ducks and hens in bullock carts and lorries. All other creatures, even dogs and cats, stay close to human beings like cows and goats. They understand the joys and the sorrows, the bad and the good, the scarcity and shortages of their households. The sky do not keep so much track of life. Every morning, they fly away toward the dense Sal and Segun forests of Choto and Borodung. There are so many other trees there, Arjun, tamarind, shiri, acacia. The birds carry food in their beaks and come back home. In the nests they have built in the hollows of the trees and on branches at the edge they have laid. And there are newborn chicks who have not found their voice yet. And if you open their beaks, you will see bright red gaping mouths. What happened one fine day was, tell me, Kuber was saying this indeed, but his eyelids were closing with sleep. Ma was deliberately stretching the end of the so that Kuber would fall asleep listening. On certain days, what he was listening to at the time that he had not fallen into deep sleep remained in Kuber's mind. One day, the birds had flown off like every other day, leaving their chicks and eggs in the nests. The sun was just about rising. Crowds of people, carts and bullocks were standing next to the newly constructed sluice gates of the dam. The birds had not noticed anything. Otherwise, they would have seen that the last people had evacuated, emptying the entire village, pakka buildings, huts, granaries, and local markets. Towards twilight, when the birds were on their way home, Hirakud was a sea of unlimited water with gently swaying blue waves. The water had been released after morning. The water from the river had come through the sluice gate and filled the heart of the biggest dam in the country. Birds then became directionless. Their familiar villages and trees were all underwater. Their distress calls sounded like wailing. They failed their wings and were trying to look for those branches where they used to sit, up about to flying. Their resting places had all gone deep underwater, so the birds flew in circles over the water. Who could say on which tree lay their unhatched eggs, the that had not yet learned to fly? Bo, have you seen those birds fly? Who were used to ask? This tragedy of this entire thing. The birds are coming back, the entire landscape has changed in water, and they're circling above the water to find the trees they had when they left in the morning. I mean, I heard all the stories when I traveled in this area, talked to the old people, and they still have remembered their villages, but the submergence has happened, and it is of course a story of prosperity, no doubt, because Hirakud Dam brought great agricultural prosperity in Sambalpur and Bargarh districts of Odisha. But there is also a story which probably in times of prosperity we don't want to recount. I thought that these stories must be preserved and told.
Yes. Thank you for that, Anita. And before we end, I just want to tell you that this is not to put any pressure on you, but given the extraordinary time we've been living in over the past few years, we are expecting some extraordinary fiction from you as well. We meaning translators first and then readers. So, thank you. It was lovely chatting with you. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Arunava, and thank you, Anita ji, for that beautiful session. If you all enjoyed the session, please do share with your friends and on your social media pages. Thank you all for watching and being a great audience. We will be back in the new year with a new session on Jaipur Literature Festival's Words Are Bridges. On behalf of the entire team, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. Have a great evening.